So welcome everyone. We're doing a launch info session for our upcoming batch of User Experience Career Accelerator. This upcoming batch will be our 12th batch. So that means we have already graduated almost 200 people in the process, right, of running this program over the last 5 years. Of course, we started with smaller numbers and then it grew bigger. And then now it's slowing down because of the tech layoffs. So we're getting smaller, generally smaller class sizes. But overall, we've got about close to 200 alumni. Okay, and today I want to share a little bit about like why we started this program, like how has it been going, for the last couple of years since 2019. And I want to say that in terms of this program, when I started it, right, as an educator, I was freelancing for General Assembly. I was teaching at the polytechnics, right, and I actually saw there was actually a missing piece when I was being a lecturer in all these other different programs, right, and actually the missing piece is the career support, right, and the preparation around transitioning. And a lot of the institutions and a lot of the schools, they have this general focus on the skills and the theory, which is all well and good. But when it actually translates to the actual work itself, let's say practicing being a UX designer, and the confidence of believing that you are now a UX designer, right? Let's say you are a different profession, like a paralegal previously, and now you want to believe that you're a UX designer. That takes quite a leap. And I realize the schools don't actually take care of that, right? They don't have career coaches. They have career counselors, but they don't have career coaches, which actually meet up with you one-on-one on a regular basis to help you identify what are your strengths and weaknesses and how you can make that transition process happen. And psychologically, do you have any limiting beliefs that prevent you from making that transition? So I realized that was also missing. And I actually started with this question, and I asked myself, like, okay, if I were to help some of my students to transition into the tech industry, and I was already in the tech industry back then, right, working at Razer, and even looking through some candidate profiles myself for UX design roles. So I was like, what is the thing that we need to do in order to have the highest probability, right, in helping them to secure their jobs? Because there are a ton of programs out there like that say that they prepare you for a UX design career, right? But how do we make sure that every hour that you spend in this program, every dollar that you spend in this program, that you're actually getting good value out of it, right? And it needs to translate to a result in some case. So that was my starting point. And for those of you who are familiar with the design process and framing design problems, this is like the how might we statement that I started with, right? I wanted to create a program with the highest probability of helping someone who's in mid-career to transition into a job in tech. And I started with UX because I was already teaching UX back then. So now fast forward last couple of years, recently back in 2022, we did a campaign with Hosan Leong to capture and document some of the student transition journeys, right? So not all of them can be present today, but it is a growing network. And I wanted to show you what are some of the profiles of people that we have helped transition, right? And then we'll speak more about it. So let me play this 4-minute video.
Or what was your day job before you went into UX?
Right, so previously I was working as a researcher in NIE.
Previously, I was actually a math teacher. I was teaching for about 6 years.
You must have been a bit frustrated or perhaps a bit of inertia after a while. What was that like?
So what actually pushed me?
Yeah, what pushed you into saying, you know what, I'm going to do something different?
So actually for me, I have been in that role in the company actually for more than 6 years plus, and then in between actually I have changed a little to become a formulator, meaning to make the products itself. But during that time, before that actually I always thought that climbing the corporate ladder, is actually the only way to success. So I was kind of like feeling a bit stuck there. Yeah.
What was missing?
That challenge.
The challenge. So to you then, you thought the challenge would be to switch.
Yes.
Is it to learn something else?
Yes.
I see. And so you decided to do UX.
Yes, precisely.
The reason why I switched to UX is because UX is pretty much new, right? So the methodologies and the ideas were actually some of those things I learned during my design education. And some of these things is something that I wanted to do in my career. But somehow because of these, restrictions in the industry, UX was the only one that was, I would say, forward thinking, because they came out in the last 10 years or so. So they eliminated a lot of these old methodologies and design thinking, or basically bad habits.
A lot of research comes from asking questions, right? Like asking the questions like, why do the things happen the way they do? Like, how do people actually see what they see? And here I'm specifically talking about digital interfaces, right? Like user interfaces. And when people actually interact with this user interface, so what is going on in their mind? Like, how do they know where to click? And like, why this and why not that? Like, what is design that calls out to them that actually helps make their lives easier? I mean, that's the grand idea, right? The whole idea of UX is to make people's lives better, to make people's life easier, right? And I wanted to be part of this process where I can find out how can I make digital interfaces work for you as the user.
At the time when I was learning in CuriousCore, there was an instructor, Daylon, super knowledgeable, I will tell you, and I like that his focus is not just about like design. He really teaches you about the mindset, and the talks that he gave and the conversations that he makes makes you feel very empowered to do things. Yeah, so I really like that, and he really takes each of the curriculum, not just like by the book, right? He sees what on that day, the students needs, and then he might just like pick a framework and then talk about it.
So the reason why I chose them among some of the other options was because they have a very strong personalization to it. Like they customize it to you, you see. Like for example, the career strategy, how the different touch points that you have with the instructors, your co-instructors. I really like that. And the fact that the projects are all based on real clients.
So, well, thank you. I think because I've been sort of the main person that's been teaching the program for such a long time, so when we have people back, they do talk about me, but I also like to highlight that the instructor team that we have today is also really solid, and that they do help me cover areas that I'm not super familiar with, right? Like Atiqah has been helping us and helping our program in terms of covering like Figma and more advanced use cases in Figma and design. And for a period of time, she has been helping us with also shepherding like larger groups of students in this case. So feel free to check out the individual videos if you're interested in the individual journeys of our alumni students. But just to give you an idea and a sample that all of these people have actually made that transition, I wanted to showcase that diversity in terms of jobs, in terms of experience level, and they were in your place, right? Many years ago, some of them. Okay, and today our alumni network is actually one of the biggest differentiators versus other programs, because other programs, once you graduate, the schools actually don't bother maintaining the alumni at all, or even like much. And I think that's really sad, because I don't see a very active UX community in Singapore that constantly meets up or constantly like have events. So as a school, we still continue to invest in our alumni. When we have new modules or new courses, we invite our alumni to come back and take these new modules absolutely for free. And we also try and get feedback from our alumni, and some of our alumni become our instructors, like Ning over here. Like Ning, when she was in the program, she was already a first-year UX designer, but she didn't have a design mentor, right? When she was working in UX, so she decided to invest in herself and join the program. By the time she left, she secured a role as a senior product designer. First at a bank. I think she worked for OCBC first, and now today she's working for NTUC Enterprise. And she comes back to teach our students about like what is the handover process from design to code and development, because she works with engineers very closely. And we have people like Charlene, who's from the first batch of the program. She's working at TikTok, and a few others. I also wanted to show people who are a little bit more recent. Lynette is a more recent graduate, graduated last year, and she was a former officer, right? Army officer in Singapore Armed Forces, and she's landed a role as an associate UX analyst. Clement is also fairly recent. His role is not in UX fully, but he became a digital product manager. So when the last time we checked with our alumni back in 2021, we're looking at the entire landscape and where our alumni ended up in. We tracked that 79% of them actually landed a role in tech within six months after graduation, right? So you might ask what happens to the 20% or 21%, right? Most of them, they made a decision, a very conscious decision, not to pursue a career in UX. Some of them, they decide to give up because maybe they felt like it was a little bit too tough. You know, they didn't see through going to enough interviews. But we see that at least 79% of them managed to make that switch into somewhat of a tech career, including product management itself. So the kind of disciplines that you can go into is very varied. And as I have conversations with multiple people, people always ask me, hey, you know, is there a possibility I don't have to drop my salary, right? Where my salaries can be matched. Although we don't track salaries, but sometimes when I talk to graduates, they do tell me their salary. And I would say generally, if you have good negotiating skills, you understand how to position yourself, which is actually something we help all our students to do. And at the same time, you can explain about how your past experience and your past skill set is actually going to be valuable in your new role. You should not actually see too much of a drop in your salary. And when I say that, what we have seen is that you see only about like a 10% kind of like pay cut, or if you're already drawing very high salary today, right? You either get, 10 to 15% pay cut, or it matches your current salary. And in some cases, people who were graphic designers who were not paid very well, like maybe they were drawing less than $3,000, right? On a monthly basis, we see their salaries double, right? Because they were able to present themselves as like a very strong candidate in a high growth startup, right? And yeah, of course, when you have such a high salary, be prepared to work crazy hours as well. So Atiqah and I know that kind of life. If you want to ask us about past lives at Razer or in all the different growth startups, yeah, we can share more of you later. Okay, so this is a growing alumni. It's actually one of the key differences between our program and other programs. At the same time, when I first started this program, right, I actually put together a panel of industry experts to consult with them on the curriculum. And the initial batches, right, all the way till batch 6 or batch 7, we had all these people meet on a regular basis to just kind of review the program. Atiqah herself was one of the teaching staff in the program as well. So I'm showing you logos of their roles when these are like their older logos back then when we were kind of huddling together to talk about curriculum. So this is actually very grounded, right? In terms of the tools and the things that we do, it's still very, very grounded on what the industry requires. And every time in the program, when we send our students for mock interviews with our panel of instructors or mock interviewers whom we pay, they will tell us, how strong the student is versus all the other candidates they're seeing. And one will always make sure that our students are like stronger than all the CVs and all the profiles that they are receiving, which helps to differentiate them in the market itself. Okay, so some of the other things that a lot of students are attracted to about our program is, as was mentioned in the video, was like commercial projects. I wouldn't say every single batch you'll have a chance to work with AirAsia, but AirAsia has been a long time collaborator with our students, and they have constantly been giving different types of projects for different batches, right? Working on their actual super app. And the AirAsia team is super fast in implementing all the things that our students suggest. The students don't get to work on the UI so much, but they work on the UX, they work on the research, they work on a little bit on the parts of the strategy for the app itself. And we do such projects with other startups, other nonprofits as well. Okay, so that's one key differentiation. The second key differentiation is that, instead of coming to a program and you only listen to me, and you only have one instructor or you only have 2 instructors, right? You're actually coming to a program and you have like at least 5 instructors covering different areas in UX, right? Of course, I'll mostly be the main instructor. You'll see me most of the time. But the value of this program is that you also get a chance to network with the other instructors. And these are people who come in after their day jobs and they're spending time to teach, and they're giving you their perspective as they are working from the ground, right? So sometimes when you go to other programs, they get instructors who are actually no longer working in the industry or have not worked in the industry for a long time. And I think that makes the program a little less valuable, because you can't ask them, hey, what is the current practice that you're doing and how is it working out? And if you ask me like, hey, Daylon, are you still working in an industry? I'll say yes, because every time I'm working on all these projects with the students, some of them actually lead to like consulting projects, and I do consulting with the different teams as well, right? So still pretty much attached to the industry, although I'm no longer as hands-on as I used to be. And the third thing I think that really differentiates us from other programs is that we actually provide career support during and after the program. And what happens during the program, as I mentioned, is that you need to have this mindset shift, right? And it's going to be hard for you to embrace a new identity if you don't have someone you can trust talking you through the process. So we actually work with a certified career coach who's a International Coaching Federation certified, and she has been helping our students, meeting with them on a monthly basis to help understand, what are the things that they can improve in terms of their career positioning. What are the limiting beliefs that they have for them to actually make that transition happen? I'll say a lot of times our students graduate, they have the skills, but sometimes they have a little bit of a self-sabotage where they actually don't believe that they're UX designers, right? So our intent is to make sure by the end of the program that they believe, hey, actually I can do this on a daily basis, and it's actually very feasible. So that is one of the things that happen in the program. And we also give our students the opportunity to interview with 3 different industry practitioners, show them their portfolio, get feedback in the process. And these practitioners are paid in the process, so they'll actually spend time with the students and they'll give actual valuable feedback and tips to help make that transition journey a little bit better and also more realistic, right? It's like a sense check. And after the program, as instructors, we are happy to answer any questions, right? Officially, we say only 3 months after the program, you can text and email us. But you know what? Like sometimes people still email us after 6 months, after 7 months, and I still entertain those questions, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you get the foot in the door, and we want you to do well. In this case, so the support continues, and it doesn't just continue from my team, but it also continues with the alumni coming in to help make this support happen. And all the alumni can testify over here. Like I post a lot of jobs. A lot of those jobs are not like listed on LinkedIn. I post like freelance projects. I post like different events and opportunities on a regular basis on the Telegram chat that we have. Okay, so those are some of the key differentiation from other programs that other training providers are actually not offering. And recently we added a lot of different new modules because we see changes in the industry and the landscape. And one of them is actually how does AI play a part in the product design process, right? So this is like a one hour module on going through like different AI tools and some prompt engineering. So prompt engineering not just for content creation, right? Prompt engineering for actual work, or like writing user stories or coming up with research questions, for example. So this is available free for our alumni, and we recorded the session, we put it up, and it's still being offered free. The other one is communicating design impact, which is more important than ever with all the tech layoffs that are happening right now, which is very, very unfortunate because tech companies overhired some time ago. So what ends up happening is that designers need to justify their work. They need to be a little bit more visible, right, when they're in an organization. And I think this is a very important module on how to communicate that design impact, how to sell your ideas in the organization itself. And the third thing is that we're seeing roles collapsing, right? Because now it's quite recessionary, right? And companies are like restructuring, they're trying to like combine roles. So we're seeing roles collapsing, and we're seeing students, even taking on the product management discipline. And since product management is actually our second vertical in terms of like what we teach, right? And we actually teach GIC Singapore, we actually teach GovTech on product management. So since that is our discipline, we might as well offer it to our UX students. So our UX students today actually get to attend our one-day program for free as well, right? So that's actually something that we offer to our students as a form of like value add. So you might ask, oh, wow, this is like, you pay for this program, but then you're still getting like future training and you're still getting like improvements to the program. And I don't think any school or any other programs can tell you, hey, this is like, we're not going to charge you more money, right? If they ask you to come back, they're going to like probably charge you more money for more programs. But we don't actually do that because we're already doing some of these like programs for our enterprise clients, and we don't actually need to earn even more money from our alumni and students. Okay, so I want to share that we actually have a special offer for people who were ex-bootcamp graduates. So ex-bootcamp meaning like you took a bootcamp last year in 2023, you graduated, but you have a problem landing a job. So maybe like you went to General Assembly, or you went to NTU, or you went to some other program under NTUC or whichever, and you still have problems like transitioning. So the funny thing is that over the years, graduating over like 160 people, right, is that we have seen people who used to study in General Assembly and the other GA, other programs, but mostly GA. They come to our program and then they're like, okay, can you help with the transition process, right? So and actually after our program, they managed to make the switch, and I think a big part, I believe, is actually the portfolio that we help them to prepare, because in GA you only get to work on one real project, and at a point in time, at that time, I think the curriculum was also a little bit outdated. I'm not sure how is it recently. So we want to also demonstrate the point that, well, you don't have to invest too much money. We'll actually offer you the program at cost. If you're an ex-bootcamp graduate, just let us work with you, and we'd like to also see that you make that transition happen, right? Despite a very challenging economy for tech at the moment. Okay, so approach me or Vivian or team members after this if you like to find out more about the offer. And with that, I'm actually done with sharing the program overview. I'd like to invite Eliza to just come and share for a couple of minutes like her own experience. So let me just give a very general introduction to Eliza first. Eliza has been one of our past students in the past batches, and when she came into the program, before she came into the program, she was working on something quite different, right? She was actually working in GovTech already, but not as a UX designer, so to speak. So she was actually more on the consulting side. And after she joined the program, she built a portfolio. She actually went into Circles.live to become a UX and product research manager, before moving on to be assistant director at CPF right now, for ops and experience design, right? So Eliza, let me know if I've got some of your career details wrong, and you feel free to elaborate. Okay, all good.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so yeah, so just want to have a casual conversation and a chat with you. You know, what are some of the things that you're doing today as the assistant director in ops and experience design at CPF? Yeah.
Okay, so I would say there's three parts to my work. So one part is actually UX research, but not so hands-on per se. So what I do as a UX researcher for CPF board, because they have both physical products as well as service centers. So that was something that I never had an experience in, and I was very interested to find out how UX can be applied to physical spaces. So I actually advise teams on their research methodology, and as well as taking the lead to pilot some of the UX research efforts in physical spaces. So, for example, how do you improve customers who are the CPF members? How do we improve their experience at service centers? And upcoming projects, for example, when you want to revamp a service centers, how do you actually apply UX research methodologies to these spaces? So that's one aspect with the team or the ops side. The other aspect for me now, it's more of knowledge transfer. So I'm actually creating a qualitative research program for our own staff, so that every single ops team can be equipped with basic knowledge on how to conduct interviews, surveys, and focus group discussions, for example, because these are some of the methods that we use very extensively at the board, just to understand CPF members. So the other part, at I guess a mid-level practitioner now, it's more of how do we actually transfer knowledge to our C-suite, the seniors, on the value of design. So on the other side of UX, also going back to a little bit of the things I was doing back in GovTech was service design. So at the systems level, how do we actually apply UX when you have to take into account customers' journey, as well as how you as organization deliver that service to customers. So we are also looking into internal processes, how do different departments work together, and how does that translate to the quality of service that's delivered to CPF members of different life stages. So I guess now in my current role, it's broader in the sense that I also cover the UX research aspect, and also still doing a little bit of what I was doing back in GovTech. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing like what you're currently doing today. And actually I would say that, you know, like the fact that you're able to get into a mid-level role like so quickly, I was wondering if you have any advice for people, right, who may have some experience maybe in the research area, and I'm just kind of figuring out what's your secret sauce of like, you know, landing a mid-level role, or getting promoted like fairly quickly along the process.
Secret sauce, not sure if it's a secret, but I think being able to translate what you have previously in your past work experience actually helps you to get a more senior role in that sense. So previously with GovTech, when I was working on systems level, the kind of research that I do it's a bit high level. So I'm looking at things like knowns and unknowns, a little bit of sense making the landscape, horizon scanning. So those are the basics. And then of course, as we move through the different the types of things that we do within service design, for example, when you come down to questioning techniques, what are some of the things that I use in a workshop that can actually translate to UX research? Because fundamentally, UX research is about asking questions, right? And really getting the conversation going. Whether you're using techniques like interviews, focus group discussions, is the same thing, especially when you're running workshops. So being able to bring the experience to the table was something that my past employers actually appreciate. Another aspect to research is also how do you translate that to design? So I think in my portfolio, I try to explain how research is done, the process, what are some of the key findings, and how that's actually being brought to life through the design itself, the graphics. So I think that's something that I appreciate the course for, because being able to translate research into design is something that the product teams appreciate. And then the other side is, you know, translating research into something that's more service driven. So how do you actually translate that into service concepts, for example? So yeah, that's the two sides that I have.
Awesome. And I think you also articulate like your career positioning, your experience level quite well in order to sort of also justify. And I know you had a very brief stint at Circles.live. How was it like working with a startup versus like now you're working on the government side?
I think the key difference is having different pool of resources. So at the startup, I will find that it's faster paced than government, because I think for startups, the key was actually to launch products quickly. And in that space, when I was doing research, they have a lot of commercial tools. So that was something that I had to get used to very quickly and to adapt, because in government, of course, we don't use commercial tools. We have our own different set of tools. So in the area, learning curve was quite steep. You know, getting to know different types of UX research tools, and at the manager level, I also had to make a call whether or not we should be using this tool or that tool. You know, different functions and things like that. Another aspect to that role within Circles Live, which I found very interesting, was being able to work with different people from different departments. So I was working with MarTech product manager. I was working with software engineers, and also with designers. So for them, it's very different because they are very small teams, and they don't exactly have a matrix function. So they are still very much a squad. But the good thing is that I'm able to tap into different people within the different teams to understand certain processes, how the product is going to be launched and what's the roadmap overall. So then, I can actually introduce new techniques and tools. So one thing that I did in my knowledge transfer to the organization was also the use of Miro. It's not something that UX designers usually use. They are more comfortable with Figma, FigJam, and things like that. So when I show them how you can map customer journey on the board, they are able to see visually and visualize how that customer journey can actually come to life. I think that's something new that my colleagues actually learn. And then from then, I also learn a little bit more about, for example, how is the product being developed back end? What are some of the considerations that I need to think about as a researcher? So one of the projects that I worked on was actually information architecture of a website. Usually businesses will tell you, oh, I just want to improve the navigation bar, right? And they just think that, oh, changing labels is very easy. You can get it done within 1 week. But it's not so simple if you really want to evaluate the website. So in that space, I read a book that Daylon gave, this polar bear book on information architecture, front to back 7 times, just to develop and to tailor the criteria to evaluate the website for Circles. And also through that process, really speaking to software engineers, when it came to evaluating the website on navigation and design, that's one. Another aspect is also because for Circles Live, for startups that have regional presence, it's also understanding what are some of the requirements of different countries. So that was something that I never considered or thought that it mattered, because it's like, oh, website is just website law. It's just static. It's there. But I guess really understanding how different countries regulate their sites, what kind of content can go in, what kind of design is considered ideal. And this actually boils down to the graphics that you use as well. For example, what we design for Taiwan will be very different from what we design for Australia. So there are many different things to consider when it comes to designing a website. And as well as the business model, because what works in Singapore might not be what works in Australia, for example. So I think when it comes to really understanding the work in a startup, it's very, very dynamic. And I felt that I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe you did all of that in 4 months. It sounds like a lot of work and lots of late nights when you're there. And this was right after the CuriousCore program, because I think you graduated from CuriousCore back in October 2022, and then you hopped right into Circles Live. In fact, you were one of the first few people in the batch to actually find a new job. So I'm just curious, like how well did our program prepare you for such an intense job? And usually I don't think a lot of students get into that level of intensity, but yeah, I'm just very, very curious. Yeah.
I would say being able to understand the foundational knowledge was one thing. Being able to speak the language as well. So I guess the theory side of things really helped me to make sense of what's going on and what are some of the considerations that designers have to think about when they start on a project. And of course, the other part was actually the commercial projects, the so-called industry experience. I think back then we worked with 3. I think we had 1 startup, and then 2 others was Have Halal Travel, in which MC was actually my teammate, and then the other company, which I can't remember. It just slipped my mind. Okay, so I think these projects itself actually helped me quite a bit, because from the start where we have to kick off the project all the way to when we have to drive the different deliverables at different stages, these were the things that I didn't have experience in my previous job with GovTech, but I was able to use that in my day-to-day at Circles Live. So I think the entire process of knowing what your clients want, knowing how and what to deliver, and also to manage their expectations, these were really the key things that helped me through Circles Live. So even though I was thrown into this somewhat senior role, they're trying to figure things out as I go as well. I think these are some of the key concepts that I really stuck to, and it helped me in managing stakeholders as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And I also want to highlight that not everyone from the program immediately hops into a senior role, but I think I'm happy for Eliza that she managed to secure that. And there was, of course, the program helped at some level in helping her to deliver on the impact that was necessary for her role. Just wanted to understand, like, looking back at your experience, I know it's been a while. It's been almost more than a year since you graduated, but what looking back, and thinking about the program, like what were some of your highlights, and maybe if you have lowlights, you can share them as well, right? From the program.
Highlights for the program. I think it's the weekly meetings with my team. So I think I have pretty good teammates, and it was pretty fun working with them. So I recall the first project. We were trying to do things, in the way that we thought, okay, we can maximize our time in this program. So we were very ambitious. We were like, okay, we're gonna meet together, do our field work, and then we're gonna do sense making in person. Which is why I think back then we reached out to Daylon and asked, hey, actually, do you have an office? Can we borrow the space? Do you have a big whiteboard so that we can do our post-its and everything? Then I was like, okay, can we borrow the space? So we tried to do that as well. And I also tried to share with my teammates, like, oh, so these are some of the things that I did before. This is how we can actually do better. So that was pretty fun, the first project, but we also realized it wasn't very sustainable because everyone has full-time jobs. So it was actually quite tiring. Imagine you just finish your work at 6:30 or 7, you make it there at 8 o'clock, and then we were eating dinner and trying to do our work together. So tiring but fun because you actually go through the entire course with your teammates. Then I think the subsequent projects, we changed. I had a change in a few teammates. So some of them were the ones I worked with before, and then there were new teammates as well. So in the other two projects, it's also learning, how to not just tackle the problems with clients, but also how to learn from other teammates. So I recall I have a teammate who is an architect, and he has a very good process. So it's something that he brought along with him from his experience as architect to UX design. Then of course I had teammates like MC, who's a very, very strong graphic designer, and really learning, how are certain things, how are certain visuals organized. And then in turn, these teammates actually teach me something else. So MC also taught me graphic stuff, and even until now, sometimes I still turn to him. I was like, hey, can you advise on these color schemes? You think my design is there? Does it make sense, to a graphic designer? So I think for me, the highlights were definitely the people and also the relationships that I take away. Yeah.
Awesome. And did you felt like there was any lowlights, or there was anything that you wish was actually in the program but wasn't in the program?
Lowlights of the program, not exactly, but I think back then also I was trying to find out whether or not the design path was something that I was very interested in. So I think back then I kind of hoped that we had a little bit more sessions with on Figma, so with Atiqah as well. So I recall that session, I was like trying to follow halfway, and then I was like, I got lost. And then I saw all the teammates on Figma. Wow, design until very nice. And then I look at our own design, I was like, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this. So
Okay.
subsequently,
Sure.
my sessions is like, okay, I try to practice, and then sometimes I'll ask MC as well. I was like, hey, can you teach me how to do this, how to do that? How do you actually group the items and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing. And I think after we do collect feedback after every batch, and we did added like one more session with Atiqah after that. But I think it's also like a constant feedback, because a lot of our students, they come without actual design background, and one of the things we try and advise, hey, before you start the program, maybe you should take some basics in graphic design to help you out if, let's say, you're really serious on the visual design side. So yeah, thank you so much on sharing. And I'm wondering, like, I don't know, like how has the career support been? And actually, I felt like you didn't really use it that much, because you're like such a strong candidate already. So I'm not sure, like, how did mock interviews or how did career coaching during the program help you? Yeah.
I think career coaching, okay, maybe I'll start with Audrey. So I think it was great that Audrey came in early, because at the point where I took on this program, I was at a point where I needed clarity. knowing that, there are things that I enjoy doing, and also the curiosity to want to know what else is out there. And on the scale of design, I also wanted to move closer to the other side, so towards the implementation side of things. And I think Audrey's session really helped me to look at things in a different angle. So even until today, we're still friends. We actually just hung out like last December. So in terms of life coaching, I think she really helped me to gain a clearer direction and steps to take as well. So that was for career coaching, and then the other side was the mentors. I think for me, I struggle a bit with my portfolio. So one part is coming from government, right? I actually can't put my government projects out there, like really out there. So in the first place, when I tried to interview for jobs outside, I had nothing to show. I can only pray that they trust my words, but obviously it's not gonna work like that. So with my mentors, I actually told them, okay, these are some of the things I did in my past experience, what can and cannot be said or put out there. So how do you water down that without losing the UX research aspect to it? The other part is of course the main portfolio from the projects itself. And then I guess as UX researcher, because the idea is actually to bring your audience through the process, your thought process, as well as the translation. So my portfolio was very lengthy, and honestly, I think I until now I haven't figured what's the key to to streamline my portfolio. But what one of my mentors said, which resonated with me until today, is that if you are going for a UX research role, you would want people to know what is your process, how you actually analyze things, and how that actually translates to something tangible. And if your interviewer is not someone who can appreciate their level of detail, then perhaps you also want to reconsider whether that role is suitable for you. And that was something that blew my mind back then, because I always think as a job seeker, it's like, oh, I go there, so then I need to try to fit into that role. But it never occurred to me that it's also the other way, right? If someone can't appreciate the values that you bring through your portfolio and the things that you bring to the table, then perhaps that role itself or that organization might not be a good fit for you. Then, you can move on and find something else. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, and I think that's very, very helpful. Are there any tips or advice you have? Because some of our potential students here, they're still, on the fence on whether to like become a UX designer, or like they're not very, very certain, right, about the prospect of it. So any advice, any tips you can offer?
I think the first thing is to really know yourself. So I guess that's where Audrey comes in, because really knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and also what are some of your negotiables and non-negotiables is very important, because those are things that actually anchor you in the decision that you want to take in the next step that you want to take in your career, or how the next role actually fits into your current life stage, because life is complex, right? We all have competing needs. So that's one area, knowing yourself. And of course, the other aspect is also knowing your worth. So this was something that I kind of had issues with, thinking about how can I translate my government experience to private sector. And to Daylon's point, also a little bit like self-sabotage. I never saw myself as a UX designer until I took this course. Then you realize, hey, actually some of the things that I do is what I have been doing so far. And in my mind back then was always, to be a UX designer, you must be very good with graphic design. And it's not something that I am strong in. And so that kind of it took me some time to get past that as well. So knowing your worth and not taking anything personally. So in the job hunting process, I hunted for very long before I even landed this program. I was hunting for about 1.5 years. And I never understood why I just couldn't land that role in private sector. So then after taking this program and going through not just the program itself and also some coaching, then you realize that actually the way you view job hunting also needs to shift. So sometimes it's very easy to fall into that space of, hey, I'm not good enough to do this, or look at the JD and think, I don't hit 100% of what's out there, then maybe I'm not a good fit. So before you disqualify yourself, you need to just put yourself out there and try to learn interview, go through interviews, and don't take rejections personally. I think that's a very important takeaway. And lastly, I would say is don't settle. So there will be offers that come to you. It's very tempting to just take any offer that comes and just jump. That includes offers that perhaps they lowball you or whatever, just not ideal, right? So in job hunting, I would say just don't settle. Keep working on what you have. Then if it's not a hell yes, then I guess it's a no. Yeah.
Really, really good tips. Really good advice. Wondering, Atiqah, for yourself, you have any questions for Eliza before we end her part?
Hey, Eliza.
Hello.
Maybe could you share with us, okay, so do you see any, okay, what are your, okay, just one question lah. What's like one of your top 3 favorite moments with CuriousCore?
My top 3 favorite moments. I I think it's actually my last project. So it was close to delivery, I think. That we had to present our final project. So I think we were also very strapped for time. So the project was a bit unique. Usually have about a month to work on it, but for our team we had about less than a month, about two to 2.5 weeks. So I think it was memorable because all of us were really trying to pull our weight together and to deliver what we thought was actually a very content heavy presentation. So in that process also, I think we had a lot of late nights. But it was pretty fun because of the team. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, and of course subsequently we continued. So actually we are meeting up for dinner soon. Yeah, next time we will send you the invite. The second highlight I would say for this program would be going through the reflection piece. For some reason, right, that's the smallest percentage, but to me I thought that was actually one of the highlights because in our working life, we don't actually take that much time to reflect on the things that we do, the projects that we deliver. So I mean we know what AAR is, but I guess the way the program frames this is it allows you to reflect as a contributor in the project. And then the other aspect is also how can you grow as a designer. So I think that for me, I took some time to also look at resources on the internet and also think about what were some of the areas that I did well in and how else to improve. So I think that reflection piece helped a lot. And I would say the last part, I would like to say that it's networking, even though the whole program that I participate in was virtual back then lah. So I think really knowing your teammates, course mates, yeah, then they become your teammates actually matters a lot. And it's very interesting also because as you talk to them, you also realize their career journey and the kind of struggles that they face to some extent is something that you can resonate with. So I would say from that course itself, and I guess being moved into the alumni community is something that I appreciate because having people who has been through the journey with you, who has been there for you, giving you advice and likewise being able to give back. I think that's a community that is very hard to find anywhere actually. Yeah. So these were the highlights, the top 3 moments for me.
Thank you for your question, Atiqah. And thank you for sharing, Eliza. Yeah, there are definitely the reflection piece is something we built in because we want to force people to think more critically, and that's actually one of the hiring criterias for a lot of hiring managers. They want to look for critical thinkers, designers who think from first principles. So and of course the support, right? Like why even join a program at all, right? If you can't actually have a network that you can count on and people that you can relate to, might as well you go YouTube and learn everything yourself. right? So I think that is the that is definitely the thing. And I want to stress and highlight that we do interview every single student who comes into the program to really see if that's a good fit in the program itself. So with that, are there any other questions from the audience for Eliza before we let her off? Okay, looks like there are no questions from the audience. So thank you, Eliza. Thank you so much. So I won't hold you back because I think you probably have to head back to work. So thank you for volunteering your time to share with us over here. And yeah, now we'll just have a super short conversation between us instructors, and also like to answer any questions that some of you might have about the program. So we're happy to take questions. But just to kickstart off, I mean, just for everyone's note, like the program is still online and it's still part-time, and it can be done remotely. And one of the reasons why we do that is also because we see a lot of companies working hybrid these days. So that's also one of the key reasons why we continue to maintain. And as Eliza said, right, you don't want to get home at 6, I don't know, like maybe some of you get home at 7, right? And then you're like really, really tired and still have to go to a school, and it's very, very intense. So like keeping it online means like you're doing it from the comfort of your home. Everything is recorded. If you miss the lesson, you can still come to it. But I want to ask Atiqah, like you've taught several batches. You were a long time ago, you were a student of mine when I was teaching at GA. So you taught several batches. What's the experience been like as an instructor in the program?
Wow, okay. I think it's been very rewarding to be an instructor. It's great to see students from so many different backgrounds, some with varying knowledge of UX, seeing how they grow, how they're able to do really well along the way. And also getting, it also challenges me because sometimes they ask questions that I don't even consider. So it forces me to also research about certain things, or keep up to date with design trends and even technical skills. So I really enjoy the process. So I do think that one of my favorite things being an instructor is giving back. I feel that basically just giving back to the community, and also helping people realize what they want to do in their career. Yeah.
Thanks for answering the question. And what were, since you asked Eliza about favorite moments, what were some of your favorite moments? Yeah, doesn't have to be 3, whichever comes to mind.
I think that I really, really enjoyed the graduation dinner. So I'm not sure whether you guys are aware of this, but even though we are an online course, we still have in-person meetups. And one of the things I look forward to is the graduation dinner, where we go to have a buffet at a hotel. So for most of us, it's like the first time. Yeah. Do you still have that, by the way? The buffet?
Yeah, we still have that. I mean, most graduations, you get a certificate, right? But our graduation, you get a dinner and a certificate.
Yes, and it's a very nice dinner, by the way. So for most of us, it's the first time seeing in person. And then I think MC was there before, right? So it's really funny because a lot of them expect me to be a certain way, like they expect me to be a tall person, and they see me in person and they'll be like, Atiqah, you're really that short. So, okay, but that's beyond the point lah. But it's a nice way to really get to know, finally see people in person, to network, to hear how they're doing. And I think even beyond that, some of them continue meeting up. So even for me, I do keep in contact with some of the students. So I really appreciate that being an instructor allows me to grow my network as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so we always try and give back as much as possible. So even though we're online, we encourage people to meet offline at our office, or even and we do have one dinner right at the end where everyone gets together. Are there any questions from the audience for us instructors?
I actually have a question to the students, to the audience here. For those of you who are interested to join UX, right, or to join CuriousCore, maybe could you share with us what are your, do you have any concerns or fears? Is there anything that's stopping you, so we could perhaps address it since we are here?
Good question.
I think like
yeah, so
any
we
concerns
have
or fears?
we have one someone Lydia who shared, what's the likelihood of finding work after, especially in this tech layoffs, and it's very, very scary. Yeah.
Right. I think that's a great question. And I have to be honest with you that the job market now is not as hot as it was a few years ago, but there's still demand for it. And I think when it comes to like industries, there's always going to be a cycle. Sometimes this industry will do well. A few years later, another industry does well. But the beauty about working in UX is that you don't always have to work in tech industries only. There are many other industries that are also doing well, that are also digitizing, and they also require UX designers. So be open to considering those industries. I think one of it is healthcare. Yeah, they're also, you'll notice that they are also hiring UX designers.
Yeah, they are. I think what we try and do as a program is like provide as much support as possible. And this does not just come in the form of advice or preparation, right? In fact, we do work with hiring partners who are recruiters, who are startups, who hire for different roles. And actually, we send our student profiles every time we graduate a new batch. We send it across. We remind the old batch, if you still haven't found work, or if you're looking to find new work, please fill out the form, put your profile together, and then we'll help send it across. So I think what we try and do is to help maximize that probability. But like what Atiqah was saying, generally, I'm still in the industry, right? I've been in this industry for, wow, I don't know. It's my, I think it's close to 15 years already, right? So, and I started in advertising before like landing a role in tech, and I've been doing this for such a long time. I have not seen, of course, this level of tech layoffs in my career, but I have seen sort of the downturns as well. But all I've seen so far is actually growth, right? From my very initial years, I went to New York to learn UX, and I'm upgrading and upskilling myself. And then until the point where I was in a tech career, to landing a role in Aviva, Unilever, and then like Razer. And I've only seen like even more interest in tech and even more digitalization happening. So I think UX is sort of like one of the skills that you can learn to pick up tech skills without actually learning how to code or being overly technical. And it's a problem solving skill, right? So you can apply it and use it in different disciplines after. So we get people who become like UX consultants, we get people who become like product managers, as I mentioned, or even like just analysts, like business analysts as well. So I would say that it's not just restricted to the UX field, but once you get your foot into the tech industry, like it's easy for you to move to different roles and different positions. So I hope we answered your question, Lydia. So Ryan said that it's really, really saturated right now in terms of like the number of candidates, especially I think at the junior level. I agree with that assessment. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Like, what are your thoughts? I know you were back then, like maybe like last year, perhaps you were actually like hiring for Rakuten. Vicky, you know, what are your thoughts looking at different candidates and their profiles? Yeah.
Sure. Actually, I can even go beyond that. When I was starting out, because I was also someone who pivoted into UX, like many who are interested to do so right now. So I think 5 or 6 years ago, it was a lot easier to enter as a junior UX designer. You could do your own personal projects, right? Sometimes you don't even need to join like a boot camp, and then that was sufficient. And I know of friends who managed to enter UX through that route. But these days, because it's saturated, that's why it's even more important for you to have to be more, I would say, like, to be more competitive in a sense, to have a stronger portfolios, stronger resume. And this is something that you would get a lot of support in if you have like a network, if you have like joining a bootcamp, for example, so that you have projects that are actually by real clients, right? So all these things will help you a lot when the market is saturated. Yeah, when I was hiring, I think around back in Shopee, when I was involved in the hiring team 3 years ago, by that time it was actually quite saturated already. Like we actually received thousands of applicants just for one position. Just that back then, there were a lot more job openings lah. Yeah. And today I can see, well, when I was in Viki, I wasn't directly involved in choosing the candidates. I was involved in interviewing, but I can see that the quality of applicants has improved. I think it's because they get a lot of help, and then they are also aware that having a strong portfolio is important. So the portfolio I see from junior designers in the interview stage was way better than the portfolio I had when I was in the first year, like in the first year of being a UX designer. So that's the kind of competition that you need to expect lah, because people are preparing themselves for that. So my advice to you is try to build up a strong portfolio, strong resume, and to differentiate yourself from other UX designers.
Yeah. I think in our program, we do actually support students in that process. And every time, I think we take it as a personal challenge as instructors to raise the bar every batch we graduate. And it's so funny. I think at some point we were like, oh my God, the students are getting smarter and smarter. And I'm like, oh my God, how do we keep up as instructors? Right. And we just gotta like be even better. In this case. So like Atiqah and I was joking at one moment, wow, this batch is like way better than the last batch. Like, and each batch is like getting stronger and stronger. So we just try and keep up. We try and prepare our students as well as possible. So while the industry is saturated and now, you know, there's sort of like that layoffs and that the cuts in the job, there are still openings, right? And it really depends on how flexible you are in terms of these types of openings. Like, do you want to maybe enter from product management first? Do you mind taking a salary cut, for example, right? And all these factors will come into play before you decide whether this is like the time. But just as you're considering, hey, you know, now everyone is so scared because it's so saturated and you're not so sure whether you can make it. Everyone else is also thinking of the same thing and they don't want to make a move, they don't want to make a transition. But from my experience looking at so many students, it is not really about the timing the market, right? It's just like the stock market. You cannot time the market to win the market, right? It's about if you feel this at the point in your life, like this is the right time, you have the time and space to do the program, you think this is the career you want to invest in, then just go with it, right? And invest in the best possible resource, right? And put your best foot forward and make it happen. And I wouldn't say it's going to be smooth sailing, right? Of course, there's going to be friction. People are going to question you. But I have seen students turn a very bad situation around to make it in a good situation. I give you an example. We had an interior designer. His name is Anik. So he was let go because the company was downsizing, right? And he wanted to be a UX designer, and he really doubted whether he could be a UX designer, right? So he was also very conscious that he was from interior design skills not so good, right? Now I have to go and embrace a new kind of like design discipline. And he tried to apply for different jobs by sending out CVs. And these days I tell students, you send out CVs, you try and apply for a job, it's not going to work anymore, because like what Atiqah said, thousands of people are applying, right? You need to change up your strategy. So he had a different strategy, and I was very surprised by his strategy, but it worked for him. And he said, Daylon, what I did was I sent case studies to 10 companies that I really wanted to work with, right? So he took time to do up the case studies. He sent it to 10 companies. And I said, okay, how many companies actually reply you and gave you an interview opportunity? They say half of them gave me the opportunity to interview. They were very impressed that I took the initiative. So out of 10, he got 5 interviews. And out of 5 of them, 1 of them actually gave him a job. And you know what the ironic thing is? And he was a little proud to share this as he was telling me over dinner. He said, the ironic thing is that the company that hired me chose me over the UX designer that was in my ex company. So I was like, what? So it was like, okay, that's really, really interesting. And he was feeling quite happy about it. And I think he, in the end, he ended up like trusting himself, like, okay, this is like, I'm confident now. I have what it takes to make it lah. So he joined a health tech startup in the end. Yeah. So I think it's about this resourcefulness and ingenuity that people have that really helps with the transition process, right? And I always say it takes 2 hands to clap. We as a school will provide 1 hand, but you also need to meet us, right? And then we can sort of like make things happen. So we try and make that journey and ease you into that journey as much as possible, providing you the necessary support. But yes, it's also dependent on how much effort that you put in. Okay. I think Lydia has a question. There are people who not from design background. Although half our students are from design background, half of them are actually not from design background, as you can see from the math teacher and all that. So I think have a chat with us. We'll look at your experience and your background and see how you can best position yourself. Maybe you'll end up as a UX consultant. Maybe you'll end up as a researcher, right? We don't know at this point. So that's one of the things. Ryan has a question. What are some of the transferable skills that we'll learn that can be applied to another industry? Just in case we can't land in UX. Yeah, you got anything, Atiqah?
Okay. I do think that the skills that you'll learn in the course, it's not just design related. There's also like research skills. So research in general is something that's quite transferable lah. So you can, that you can join any industry that requires a researcher, although they might require someone with a master's. So you just have to be you just have to look through the description to see what their requirements are. What else? I think service design is also one example. You can also, by the way, it's not just being a UX designer. You can also be like a UX copywriter, for example. What are some other roles besides copywriter?
Yeah, so that's the content side of things. That's the operations side of things. We have a few students who, I mean, Eliza in some way is on the operations side, but hers is research operations. So I wouldn't say it's like pure operations, but it's more like how do you operationalize a certain function, right? Maybe it's the customer experience function. At the same time, because our students work in teams, a lot of them acquire like project management, leadership, and stakeholder management skills. They are very helpful for leading projects. So that is also something that they learn by doing in the program itself. And storytelling, right? Presentation skills, storytelling, that's something we try and get our students to be better at. How they communicate, how they communicate with impact, how to make it more concise and engaging. So these are the transferable skills as well that you can apply it to other disciplines. Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure whether you've noticed this, Dylan, but I have some friends working, they are not designers, but they are working in the public sector, and a lot of them, they're supposed to, they have to learn design thinking. So I think it's something that's being picked up in different government sectors in Singapore right now. So you could also look into that to see whether that sets you apart from other candidates.
Yeah, a lot of government organizations and private organizations are undergoing transformation and change. Much of it is related to digital, but a lot of it is related to people as well, right? So acquiring that skill to empathize, acquiring the skill to actually, solve and frame problems, which is part of the design thinking process and UX design process, helps them to bring people together, to facilitate workshops and to co-create solutions, and be able to think about what we call design interventions, right? And design interventions can be in a form of a map, it can be in a form of a actual solution or a prototype, or it can actually be a service or a product like what Eliza shared earlier. So we're also seeing a lot of that. And actually, when we're doing a lot of enterprise engagement these days, they're not really people who are just asking us, can you teach our team UX design, right? They are actually asking us, can you teach our team members the product mindset? Like, how do you be more agile? How do you kind of work more collaboratively? How do you solve problems in a different manner, right? From the ground up and not just from the top down, because people want to activate more innovation from the ground up as well. So lots of possibilities. We got someone who is currently working in Dubai airports right now. So she is so-called the architect for the entire customer experience for Dubai airports. And she was from the program, right? So it's not exactly UX in the digital side. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions that you can help answer? Okay, with that, maybe we'll end the session with one advice, I think, from each instructor about entering the industry at this current moment where it's very, very recessionary and challenging. So yeah, any advice from Atiqah, right, for students looking to enter the industry?
Yeah, I would say don't underestimate the power of networking. So even before you join the course, you can start contacting any UX designers that you see on LinkedIn. It could be myself, it could be Eliza. Ask as many questions as you want. And this period of networking, I think it should be something that you need to practice. Some people, you might not notice, but you could land, if you have a good network, right? You could have access to perhaps job opportunities that are not advertised yet. You could be memorable to someone who eventually could be a hiring manager, and then they could reach out to you. And you could learn a lot of things that you might not know. There are things that you can't learn just by Googling, but just by Googling. So it helps a lot to talk to people who are working in the industry to really know like the reality of working as a UX designer.
Excellent advice. I would say in such a recessionary environment, it's even more important to differentiate yourself as a candidate, right? And if you go through a standard cookie cutter program that tells you to do the same projects, that tells you to kind of work on the same things, and then they don't give you, pertinent advice on yourself as a candidate. What are your transferable skills? What are your transferable experience? How should you position yourself? what you will find is that you are just going to be a Me Too candidate in a sea of candidates out there. And at the same time, you're also competing with, all the mid-level candidates that are being let go from the jobs, right? So it's even more important that you understand how to position yourself and what are your strengths, what are your transferable skills and experience. Have very solid portfolio to open that door for you. But like what Atiqah say, you can open the door with the portfolio, right? You can sustain the conversation in the portfolio, and the network is going to help you to open more doors, right? But at the end of the day, do you have the practice? Do you have the actual practice to actually land the role and impress them enough to invite you back for future interviews? I'll share with you a very recent graduate. He actually took our program in a slightly different route. He went through the WSQ route and then he did some projects with us. And he's over 40, right? So he come from a graphic design background, and he was also not very confident about the process of transitioning into UX design. And it was through the learning by doing of the projects that he solidified his language, right? Which is something Eliza said earlier, working language, and also the ability to know what to do at that point in time. And I think that was with the portfolio, he took it to an employer, and employer decided to hire him. He just got hired one week ago. So I was checking in with him, asking him how he is, right? He said, wow, a little overwhelming, but then like he's in a good spot and a good place, right? So that is that's what we try to do to help each and every one of our students who come through the door to differentiate themselves even from each other, even if they have the same project, right? In the program, we do cover like how you talk about your project a little bit differently from the other student who was in the same project. So with that, I think I'm very conscious of time, and we'll end the session here if there are no further questions. Okay. All right. So thank you, Atiqah, for spending time with students. And of course, you get to see Atiqah as one of the instructors coming back to teach Figma. And we have a few other guest instructors as well throughout the program on different parts. Audrey is our career coach. So feel free to refer to our brochure if you need more information. If you'd like to have a chat with me, I'll stay around for a couple of minutes just to answer any remaining questions. And with that, I thank all of you for spending time with us in this info session. So I hope you found something valuable and useful from the session. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.